Welcome to another episode of Stronger Than Cancer, the podcast. I've got a wonderful guest today, and I actually want to preface this up front. I heard Jennifer on another podcast that is very similar to ours, and immediately was like, I really want to get Jennifer on this podcast, and I really want to get this story out. So today's guest is a brain cancer survivor, an author, someone who brings a powerful mix of grit, insight, and hope. Jennifer was diagnosed in 2011, and from what the conversations that we've had, the journey became less about the illness and more about transformation. And I'm really looking forward to digging into that and bringing that to life. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for having me.
It's no problem. As I said, I heard you on the survivorship, and I listened to that. And I was very early in my journey, one on my cancer journey, two on the podcast journey, and immediately went, that's a guest I've got to have. So I did actually reach out to them and was like, do you mind if I steal this one? I was like, I don't want to tread on your toes, but this is one that I must have. Jennifer, I always start off the same way. So let me ask you this question. What does being stronger than cancer mean to you?
Being stronger than cancer is I sort of feel like this is not the question in a way. The way I see it is that cancer is a metabolic problem and a challenge and something to be managed and to take a look at it. If you start to say that cancer is bigger than anybody, it's overwhelming. How are you going to possibly get to the other side of that? So it is something to address. It's the wake up call. It's pay attention, but I don't feel like it's looming. You have to loom. Even I see some movies or TVs and they call it the C word. That's terrible to me, right? Like, no, it's a cancer. It's a metabolic breakdown, and we have an opportunity to do something with it. So I guess that's kind of how I see that one.
Yeah. When we spoke, you also mentioned like cancer was like that red light on the dashboard of your car that's telling you there's something's wrong, but it can be fixed, and it's now up to you how to resolve that. And I really loved that sort of that definition of it. It was, because I think that there's just this element of you get diagnosed with cancer, and certainly if you're in a stage 4 where it can be quite frightening, immediately go, that's it. But I love that at this, even at this stage, and the stage that you're at, where you go, well, actually no, I think this is just a warning sign. I think I can figure this out,
Yeah,
and I
100%.
think you did that really well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's just like when your car and all of a sudden it's like something you're out of gas or whatever. It's a pay attention instead of this, oh, da 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 da. There's no way. Even the doctors will tell you there's no chance. But at the same time, you've got to understand this is just a wake up call. Wake up.
So Jen, I think what'd be interesting is if we break into your journey, because you've had a fascinating journey. You've done some wonderful things throughout that journey and after as well. But I really want to give the listeners the sense of what that journey was for you. So obviously diagnosed in 2011. Tell us about that. Just to give us an insight into what you've been through, and then we'll dig into that a little bit as well.
In 2011, I was a really busy lawyer, had my own firm, 12 offices all throughout Georgia. So I was a pretty stressed out lawyer. Had to go through the financial crisis. You'll remember that was 2007, 2008. And there was a lot of management that I had to do. And I started to have, in 2011, I started having issues. Lights were too bright for me. And I get the IT guy. I'm like, what can we do with that? Or I started having trouble reading. And I had trouble remembering some of my clients' names, and I had some famous ones. And basically, I went to a doctor, and he was like, "Yeah, all the lawyers are stressed out. Don't worry." But then, when you have brain cancer, it actually grows very, very quickly. And mine was grade 4 glioblastoma, which is like considered death sentence. So, but it was growing very quickly. So my situation started getting worse and worse. And I was actually doing a public speaking event in Florida. I'm from Georgia in the US. And I'm doing it. And the night before, I'm having trouble remembering my own words. And I had, I've done this spoken a million times, but that's how bad the pressure was going on. And I did the whole hour, but for the first minute, I struggled with my glasses, and I was like, "Oh, forget my notes. Screw that. That's not going to work." And I just did it for an an hour, hoping nobody would ask any questions, which of course nobody did. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. And I couldn't understand. Got an MRI the next day. And then I'm there like, ma'am, you cannot go drive home. Just like, so many people have these things like that. And at the hospital, that's where they diagnosed me effectively as grade 4, which is they basically said, you've got about 12, 18 months maybe. I was 44 and I had a first
Mm.
grader, first two little girls, first grader and third grader. So it was shocking for sure. I thought I was a healthy person. I was a runner, I worked out and stuff, but I was a stress case. I would learn later.
Yeah. And you've mentioned a couple of things there. Almost immediately, it prompted me with probably 3 or 4 questions that I want to ask. You mentioned obviously busy lawyer. You had your own firms, many offices across your area. I'm a believer that stress, anxiety, sadness, depression, all of these things that we go through, I'm a believer that creates some form of platform for trauma and illnesses, including cancer. I mean, are you of that belief? I mean, given that you were that stressful, and
It's
are you of the
actually been
belief that,
studied. You're hitting it completely. It has actually been studied. They've shown that stress is associated to the top 6 killers at least for the United States. And the 2 others are cancer and heart attacks, heart attacks. So cancer looms, I mean, stress looms with the biggest situation. So if you're running like I was, every morning I'd wake up, I'd be like, holy shit, I gotta do all these things. I've gotta, I've got to do this. I've had this meeting and stuff in such a stressful circumstance financially. We were having to deal with everything. Your cortisol is pumping constantly. And the cortisol is what happens when you've got a shocking situation, like you're confronted with a bear and you're like, oh my God, run or stay or fight or whatever it is. Well, if you're running that cortisol, which is a natural hormone that comes from our own bodies to protect us if something bad is happening, if you do that, you're wearing your entire body down. It's a temporary thing, but we can choose to live with that, not realizing how sick we made. So I am completely sure that the consistent stress that I carried, and also my mind thought like I'm responsible of the financial crisis, I took so much responsibility. And I would learn again later with some help and support that to let those kind understand that wasn't your fault. You didn't cause the financial crisis. We take stuff on for more than we should. And that was certainly my case. So stress, not our friend.
yeah.
Yeah. Something to
So,
be managed.
and it is, and I think that if there are any listeners that are here as a carer or a family member, or even anyone that's just listening because they're a fan of mine. I don't know if I've got any fans, but I'm hoping I do. But if there's anyone,
You've got
I think the message that I've got one, right? So I think the message is there is that if you are living that life of stress, anxiety, and pressure, you have no idea on the impact that's going to have on you later on down the road, and you have to try and relieve that some way, because we are living proof that going through that stress and all of that stuff, that we have maybe given some platform to the trauma that we went through and the journey that we went on. I wanted to also ask, because it felt like the diagnosis was quite sudden. It wasn't like you were having sort of episodes that you had when you were doing that speech for a long period of time. I mean, were there any other warning signs before that you kind of look back on now and go, that might have been it, that
Yeah.
could have been it? Were there anything there?
Yeah. I started having, there's a famous woman. In fact, we just saw her on TV recently, and she was my client. And I had referred to her a litigator. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a transactional lawyer. And so we don't do litigation stuff. And I was helping her in this situation, but we needed to have a litigator in this case at this point. And this is about 5 months before I was diagnosed. And it was snowy, and it's not normally snowy in Georgia. In Georgia, it's more like in the South, like Florida. But it was this really weird day. And I was having a conversation with her, and I was saying, that lawyer. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She wouldn't help me, she wouldn't help me. And I'd be like, well, the lawyer I referred to you. And she was like, I don't know who he is. And I know his name, but I couldn't get the word. So this was in January. Remember, I get diagnosed in May. So that was my first weird thing that happened. I was like, this went on for about 5 minutes, which is a long time to have a stumble like that. And so it was just like a blur, right? And then I was like, normal, 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 humming along, humming along. But then, like I said, I would start to have the lightness, and I was like, wow. And then I went to an eye doctor who's like, oh, you're old, so you need these little things and stuff like that. That's basically what he said. So everybody I touched would say, eh, this is normal. You need your little cheaters. Okay, I need cheaters. And then I actually went to a doctor, a neurologist, and he was like, yeah, all the lawyers are stretched out. Don't worry. I'm like, when I discovered this, I was so angry, obviously, because there's so many interventions. But to your point, I had little blurbs along until it got so bad. That time I was doing the public speaking, and I had hundreds of people at that event. Like the fact that I was able to do anything decent was
Mm.
good, but it was growing very quickly. I didn't understand that, but that's
Yeah.
why it started to degrade pretty quickly after that.
Well, move on. I'm still interested. I'm wondering, did you have any gut feel during that process? So people are telling you, here's your glasses, you're just a little bit old. Here's, it's normal. We go through that sort of thing, right? But did you
Yeah.
did you agree with that and go, yeah, fair enough, I'll go along for that ride? Or was there
Um,
something in your gut that went, I'm not sure, this has never happened to me before?
You are. I'm glad you mentioned that. When I go to the eye doctor and he's like, "Yeah, you're no spring chicken. You need these little glasses." But I'm in the car and I call my husband because he knows the little journey that I'm on. I'm like, "What's going on with me? I don't know." But I'm such a strong person. I felt like it's such a strong person. Somebody like me wouldn't get so sick like that, right? Um,
No.
but I call him and I'm like, I said, it's just glasses. I just need the glasses. That's all it is. And I get off the phone and I think to myself, I say this in the book. I say, but I think both of us knew that that wasn't going to be the end of it. Like, I think there was
Right.
this intuitive sense that, look, I have no idea where to go with this thing, but this is not okay. This is not right. And then that big public speaking, where people are standing up, stand alone, event. That's where I was like, I'm really bad. I'm in trouble here. Like I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the reason I ask that is because I don't know if we trust our instincts enough. Certainly not as adults, or really at any age do we ever really trust our instinct. We often say, "You've got to trust your gut, go with your gut." And when it comes to trusting your gut, where a negative outcome can come out, we go, "No, we don't want to trust our gut. We don't want to talk about it." It's not like trusting your gut, going, "Should I buy that car or should I buy that watch? Oh, I think that's a great purchase," or something like that, right? It's because you go, well, the outcome of me buying that watch is just I'm going to get in trouble from my wife. The outcome of trusting your gut when you think you're ill is this could be really serious and I don't want to know about it.
A brilliant point, because let me share this with you. You will have your own intuition. The doctor will say, they'll knock you down, right? That doctor, that oncologist, not oncologist, the other neurosurgeon, neuro, whatever, that other guy I was saying, he did have
Yeah,
brain cancer. I can prove it. Um,
yeah,
he is disqualifying me, right? And the eye doctor, I literally said, I'm having some problems. He's like, no, it's just this, you look fine. You look fine. So you have this intention, just what we are saying. It's so important. Pay attention to yourself and trust yourself. And the only way I think to do that, I was so busy during that whole time. If I had learned any of the breathing techniques I had learned, or the meditation or the directed meditation, I probably would have been clearer within myself about what was actually coming up within me. But I was just running around, just living my life every day in a cortisol, factory I was creating from myself. So
mm,
all very, very great points.
yeah. Let's because this is where I think the interesting stuff really happened, right? So we're now May of 2011. You've had the diagnosis, and I think you go through some interesting sort of treatment journeys, almost sort of that that protocol, the things that we're supposed to do when we get cancer. But then I think you also integrated. You had this really integrated approach, and I'd love to dig into that. Talk to us a little bit about that. You've now been diagnosed, and by the way, and I will come back to something in a second that's an interesting question. But talk to us about that, where you start to think about treatment, and what was that journey like, and how did that unfold for you?
Okay, so pretty much once I was in the hospital, they, identifying your grade 4 glioblastoma. And to my husband, they're saying she's not gonna beat this. But they did give me the protocol, which was having brain surgery, which I did have, radiation, that was for 5 weeks, 5 days a week for
Mm,
5 weeks. And then I had chemotherapy that was after that, and that was supposed to be for 12 months, but that ended up being 9 months. So that
yeah,
was the protocol. But what happened is when they went into my brain, they probably God is all over this. I've got to say, and I didn't grow up with religion at all, but the things that happen in my life in this journey is just crazy. But the surgeon, he just came in and he took a little piece in the cancer, which is so bad because everything gets angry. Oh, I'm all here. Oh, what's happening? I have to
yeah,
protect this area. The cancer wants to protect itself, right? That's why it's messed up. It should have died a long time ago, but that's why cancer just hangs in there. So he goes in though dangerously, but he pulls out because he's trying to see, is she a grade 3 or a grade 4? Well, who cares? Get it out.
yeah,
But what a
yeah.
blessing, because he would not have been the right surgeon for this. Um, so they took me 9 days to get the results of this. Is she a grade 3 or grade
Mm,
4? Who cares, right? But what the blessing was is in that time, my brother sent me a qigong CD, and my mom sent me a book about how we can beat your cancer. And then I started to find the tools that I ultimately amassed. I found 22 tools. There's no book out there for me in 2011 that had it all laid out, but I knew, now this is where I was trusting my intuitive aspects of myself. I can very quickly learned it's not just about what the doctors, I'm going to do what the doctors say because I'm scared as crud, you know, but I am also going to avail myself to all these other holistic approaches. And I started with those simple tools, and they made me feel unbelievable, as if, especially that qigong, which are gentle movements. It's about thousands of years old, Chinese, old stuff, but it was so effective and helped me calm down because I was so wound up. And all of a sudden, I would do the qigong and I would just start crying. And so in that period of time, that was a blessing actually that I got this dipwit of a doctor, because I started to heal and learn how to heal. I meet so many people in this world I find myself in, and they will be, oh, I've been doing this for 6 months or 8 months. And I'm like, dude, you're already behind. I mean, I don't say that, but I'm like, when somebody is just diagnosed, I'm like, please have them talk to me because they don't have time, especially with the stuff that I dealt with.
yeah.
So, yeah, so that's basically
I
how
mean,
it started.
we spoke about that, didn't we? We spoke about sort of that moment where you had that sort of transformation, where it was, I'm going to trust. So what I'm getting from this is that because you went through the radiation, the chemo, and obviously that played its part. There's no doubt that that approach played its part. But you did go through this huge transformation of going, actually, I need to figure out how I can heal myself as well. Now you've mentioned, and we don't want to give too much away, but you mentioned sort of the 22 tools that you went through and the 22 tools that you have now, that, I'm guessing that you live by these, right? And again, as I said, we don't want to give too much away, and I've got a ton of other questions around it, but give us some insight into that, right? So the 22 tools you're talking about, what are a couple of those that you've sort of integrated into your daily life during that journey and now that you
Yeah.
feel had, let's say, the biggest impact?
Well, great. So the way I wrote my book is to make it simple for anybody, especially since I had at the beginning, I couldn't even read. First, I had a lot of trouble in that first year. So a lot of pressure in your brain, and that's a cognitive area, which is why I still have some issues, but I'm a lot better. But the basic ones is, if you think about it, your mind, your body, and your spirit. And each broken pieces have little pieces. So let's take our body, because that's so easy. The body. What supports our body? I started to just basic stuff like, I'm going to go to sleep at 10 o'clock, because I started understanding, go to sleep at 10 and then wake up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. That's maximum time. They've done all these studies on how your brain does certain things at night. And some people who work at night, they have problems with a lot of different things, cognitive trip, they gain weight.
Mm.
We're intended to sleep when it's dark, and we're supposed to wake up when the birds are start chirping. So this is a natural thing. Simple exercise, breathing techniques. Those are simple things. Eating the right quality foods, avoiding toxins, including toxic people, especially when you're
Yeah.
sick. Get rid of those people, minimize them. If they're in your family, you're sort of stuck with them, but understand where the toxins come from. When it comes to the mind, which I absolutely love and adore and believe that is become a critical part of healing. That's where you're going to find the qigong that I was talking about, the gentle movements and stuff that can unplug the qi in your life, which is your life energy. I know these are woo-woo words, but dude, you do this for 5 minutes and you'll feel for it. And you're like, oh my God, Jennifer is exactly right. Go on the internet and go watch that and apply it to yourself. You'll see meditation, directed meditation, visualization, visualize it as if it has already happened, spending time in nature. Like, I just started doing this intuitively. And then when it was time, when people started coming to me after about 3 years and like, oh, she's not dead. Then I started coaching people and helping people, and then I wrote the book, and I was like, I really was able to put all the reasons why, but intuitively, I knew these things. And then spirit just happened to me, where I started getting messages, and I'd be like, where'd that come from? What happened? So I was blessed in that moment, because I was at the bottom of the barrel, right? So where else do you gonna go? And I didn't find God because I was scared. I found God because it was obvious that God was there with me. And that was a huge blessing. So that piece, I just tell people, if you did grow up with that, like me, or whatever it is, just explore it. I'm not grounding that, you must do this, and just explore that, because it is a beautiful opening to something that can also be very healing.
Yeah, I know, and that was so. There's. I want to take one step back, and I'm going to remind myself to come back to the religious part of the journey that you went on, and because I think this is really interesting, something that I've maybe struggled with, and I think it's also something that our listeners would struggle with as well. But I did want to ask you this one question, because it's a question that I ask all my guests who have children. What was that conversation like when you had to talk to the children and let them know that you were about to embark on this journey? And how did you handle that? And I'm interested to know, first of all, what their response was like to that.
Wow. Okay. Well, they were little. So the first grader and the third grader, we had to fly to Texas. We had to fly to Texas roughly to get the surgery. So we had to explain a little bit of what was happening. The first grader, she really didn't understand what was going on. My third grader, she understood. Mommy's really sick. Mommy's sick. And then when I had the surgery, I had the bandages and stuff. That's very scary. So we did not explain really how serious it was, but we have to go. Mommy has to see the doctor, and she's gonna have to have some surgery. But I'm sure my husband really took the brunt of that, which
Mm,
the unsold the people who are behind us, I didn't even appreciate that until after like 5 years, how much they do for us when we're really in the thick of this. But I'm sure he encouraged them that they're okay, and she's going to be okay. But I was not going, based on what the doctor was saying, even with the
yeah,
surgery and the radiation and the chemo, the whole thing, that was just buying me some more months. That they weren't saying you're going to win and beat this. They were like,
yeah,
that's not even a calculation. Just get your papers in order. It's going to
yeah.
happen. And honestly, I'm 14 years clear with this. And my oncologist, he doesn't say this anymore, but he used to say all the time, when it comes back, this is what we're going to do. When it comes back. And I would push back, I'm a pain in the butt, right? I'm like, if that happens, right? And he'd be like, well, when it happens, it's like a battle. They can mess you up, even your doctors,
Yeah.
who I love this doctor. He's funny as anything, but I'm like, dude, you do not have the corner of my health. You have a piece of it. My mind really matters. So when you tell me you have no chance, that's going to get stuck in my mind, and I got to shake that off. Like,
Yeah.
you're not giving me the winning spirit that I need to get to the other side of this. So I had to start to learn how to ignore some of those things like that.
There's two things I want to pull out of that, first of all. And the first one is that when it comes to explaining because your answer was slightly different to many of our guests that we've had, which was it's probable that your husband probably bore the brunt of having to explain what was going on to the children and stuff like that. And I think that's okay, to be honest with you, because you had your own battle right there in front of you, and you were having that battle because, and dare I say, you got through that because of your children and they were your strength as well. But it's okay to lean on people to say, I don't have the mental capacity or the strength to deal with that right now. That's probably going to be your journey right now, and my journey is this. So the message that I'm taking from that is one, lean on the people. And as you said, you didn't realize till many years later just how many people you had there doing that work for you. The second thing that you said that I think is really important is you said your doctor was saying when and you were saying if. And it's really important that you get that terminology and that language in your head right, because again, I am absolutely a believer of, if in your head you're saying when, it's going to come back, because you're going to just manifest that, right? Whereas it's you know what, yeah, okay, we say if, but I'm actually not even going to give that life or breath. I'm not even going to, I'm clear. That is I'm done. I won't think about it now. I'm always looking over my shoulder. So that terminology and the way you think and feel about cancer is so important. It
Yeah.
really is. You've got to say, you're clear. Hey, I'm clear. I'm done. And
Like,
it's not when, or in fact, it might not even be if. It's just, I'm done. I'm living my life. I'm going off now. So I think that's something that if you're on this journey, get that language right. And like you said, push back on the oncologist. When they say when, you go, no, 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 no. I'm going to be a pain in your ass, and it's actually, this isn't coming back, by the way, and I'm
well,
going to I'm going to
I
prove it
remember
to you.
I remember saying to myself, you don't know me. How many hours have you spent on me? Maybe 40 minutes, right? You don't
Mm,
know what is in me. And all of us are that way. They don't know. So how did they get to take that away from you, your hope? And I also remember, if one person has beaten this, why can't I follow that? Why can't I beat that? That's all you need, is one person, which is why I'm so an advocate about my story. And I talk to so many brain cancer, but also all kinds of cancer people. But it's just, I'm an example. I'm simply an
yeah,
example of somebody who was given no hope, who said, "Why? I'm going to do everything that I can do beyond that. And I'm here." And so that gives so many. The gentleman I spoke with in England, by the end of our conversation, it was like so happy that he had gotten the authority to allow himself to understand that even though the doctors are saying no, you can say, yeah, I don't know, I think I could do this. I think I got a good chance
yeah.
at this. So I think it's your thinking is critical.
It
Yeah.
is. It's really important. I do want to just spend a couple of minutes on this one thing, because you mentioned you didn't grow up religious, and we talked about what does reconnecting with faith, or connecting with it if you weren't ever connected with it before, and that's something I think I kind of struggled with that a little bit. I sort of, actually, it was by accident. My wonderful ex-wife bought me a book that on the front sort of said like cancer healing, but she didn't turn it over and read the back that was messages from God. And then she was like, "Oh, I've got this," and she put it in my chemo box. And I rang her at the because this is pretty much a Bible, right? She's like, "No, I had no idea." But I opened it and I started to read it, and there was this one amazing. We always ask, well, if God's so great and God's so kind and wonderful, why have I got this illness? Why is there war? Why is there famine? Why are all these terrible things happening? And then this book probably answered it the best way that I've ever heard, which was it was this is a test for you. It's a hurdle, and you have now the chance to either connect or reconnect once again. And if you do, God will help you, right? He's basically saying, come back to me. And if you come back to me, I'm gonna fix this in some way, shape, or form. And I never heard that before. I always usually heard, oh, this is just a test and it's a hurdle that makes you stronger. It's like, no, it doesn't make you stronger. Like they don't. So I kind of went, I get that and I love it. I still struggled. I still struggled with the idea of going to church on a weekly basis and doing something that I felt a bit hypocritical, to be
Yeah.
honest. So
Yeah.
how did you do that? How did you either, because you said you didn't grow up religious, and I can see now that you are very spiritual and very religious. Give me a short insight into what that looked like, because I think there will be people that are figuring that out right now. So how did you do that?
The first night at the hospital, I prayed. My neighbor was with me, and I prayed to God, and I not really knowing really what I was doing, but I prayed and I said, please, if I can beat this, I'll change everything. I'll change everything. And literally there was a reorganization of my entire life at that moment where I just said that. And it showed me the God first, it showed me, and then it showed my family. And all my accolades as a lawyer literally shattered. There was nothing. There was nothing. And so there's this moment, this quick moment where I saw something bigger than me. And then what started to happen is I couldn't work because I couldn't be a lawyer while in this condition. So I had all this time to think about things. And at night, honestly, they sort of came to me. I started getting sort of messages, and I know that sounds crazy, but I did start getting messages, and they would just say, we're loved. And I'd be like, where'd that come from? I just started getting messages like that. And I started to be open to this door. It was like I opened a door. It was like I opened it a crack because I was not a nice person. Like people would be like, "What is everybody doing on Sunday?" Or I just and I thought, you hear one bad thing about the Catholic Church, for example, and then you're like, "Oh, see, they're all bad people and stuff." Well, what I learned
Yeah.
in my journey and the messaging that I got, which is a blessing, which might be another book someday, but they would talk to me for about an hour and I'd write it all down. My husband's sleeping. I put the light over there. I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful stuff. But the messaging I got is that there's so many things I learned from that, but it was almost like they were talking to me. They weren't saying, don't worry about it. You got this, no problem. But they were present. I felt God's love and I felt Jesus with
Yeah.
me. And even when I have to do the radiation, they put a box in your head on your head and you pin down for 10 minutes and they're zooming. Well, I would just think about Jesus and I would just think about this relationship, and he's like a warrior, like my Jesus, the way I see him, he's like a warrior, right? And so I'd literally have a smile on my face, and people watch from afar because it's not great stuff, and they'd be like, why do you have a smile? I'm like, dude, I don't know what's going on with me because this is still early in my existence, but I felt the love of God, and I don't know how much more to say it. And I definitely see that some religions are, might fit, right? I don't
Yeah.
like the people who are like brim and stone. Like, why? I don't understand why you have to be scare people to find love of God. I don't understand why you have to say on Friday, if you eat meat, then you're a sinner. Like I don't buy that. God is so organic, so bigger than this. And I think that is delicious. And I think it's wonderful. And I'm so grateful for it. But the messaging that I started getting were crazy. And then I started getting messages from family members who had passed. I know, this is nutty. I'm a lawyer. I'm a practical person. But I was getting these messages. And that's why at this point, when they say, I didn't grow up with it, I'm like, work on it. Work on it,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to go to church. If it doesn't feel good, don't go to that church. Find another one, right? Explore it. Or it does help to be in a spiritual area where other people are similarly aligned. I do like that. Like at Christmas, that night when they're all like singing,
Yeah.
man, I just cry because I feel the love. One of the things they told me is that you are connected to everybody. Like you're my brother and you're my sister. And they're saying that, and like they're like You are my brother and you are my sister. They were showing the whole thing. And they also showed me how people pick colors, like skin colors. And they're just like, this is a manipulation. From the highest levels, they're telling me that is a manipulation. Everybody is your sister and everybody is your brother. And when you start feeling that level of energy and wisdom, you actually change yourself. And so like I go to a coffee place or something or whatever. I don't drink coffee, but I drink tea. My kids are like, "Oh, you're so weird," because I'll see people and I feel them a sense of love. And even some people are being like dead eyes. I don't know if you've ever had people like they just dead eyes. They just like they don't care.
Nothing behind them.
If you died, right now I could not hear, right? But I still feel like something's hurt them. Like there's an awareness now that I have. Just I don't want to keep going on, but when
No, that's
I
okay.
came from the surgery and I was all wrapped up and I finally could convalesce at my brother-in-law's house in Florida, in California. I mean, sorry, Texas. I was so alive. The birds were chirping. Every bite of food was so, I was very alive because I was alive, right? I just had brain surgery. And that lasted for about 4 weeks. This ultra sense of connectedness to this world. So think about it. I was a lawyer, and all I was doing is thinking about the past, thinking about the future. I was not being present. And the big lesson when we get sick is pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And there's no wrong or right. Some people are not going to make it. Some people are. That is okay, right? But if your goal is to try to throw everything you have at it, then do that too, understanding the reality. But learn this message. Pay attention to this moment because this is the only one we have. And I had lived without it, completely devoid of it.
Yeah.
And that was a big wake up for me.
It's an interesting one because I spent a long time before the diagnosis trying to figure out who that higher being or what that higher thing was, and I'd had multiple conversations. My wife's family are very religious, and we talk about God a lot with my children. They hear about it at Catholic school, so we talk about it at home. But I was trying to find. I was like, I just don't know. So I sort of used to say I'm spiritual but not religious. So I didn't, I sort of believed in the sun and the moon were my guide. They bring life. So I was like, the sun and the moon are my guide. That's what I believe is higher power. But then, like you, I went to church, and I think since diagnosis I've been maybe 5 or 6 times, and I've cried every time I've been to church.
Yeah.
Every single time. And normally it's when I am, I'm in my head throughout the whole session. I'm having I'm having my own conversation with God. The priest is talking. I'm like, dude, you move. I'm just going to talk directly to the big guy, right? I've got an inlet channel. So there's something there. And what I want the listeners to understand is it doesn't have to be God. That was my point. It doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be religious. But find something that's bigger than you. Find something that's bigger than your family. Find something that's bigger than the world, and use that as a guide to go, that's what I believe. And it could be all about the atoms or whatever it is, but find something bigger than the purpose or the journey that you're on, because you're going to need it. I genuinely believe that. So I'm really glad that you connected, and I can even when you were talking there was a lot to unpack, but I can sense your connectedness to it now and how happy you are that you went through that journey. So I commend you on that, because I feel like I'm somewhere close to that. I'm not far away from going, I'm all in. I wanted to, and we probably spent more there than I think. That's really insightful. Thank you so much. But you've changed so much, right? You've been on this journey, and I don't think 45-minute podcast is enough to even get your story out. But let me ask you this question so we can kind of get some sort of bullet points. What were the daily, we've got some of this, but what did you change daily, immediately, right? So, what were the daily habits? What were your mindset? What did you do during the journey? And what does that look like now? And I hope I asked that question the right way.
No, it's perfect. I'll try to do it quickly because I know I do talk too.
No.
I'm a talker. Okay. The way I approached this was every day was an opportunity to flood my body with all good things. And so I'd wake up in the morning and I'd get a green drink, and I've got the greens and the some fruits and all of these good things, some nuts in there and stuff. I'd do that. And then I'd go outside and I'd do my qigong, breathing in and breathing out. And like I told you, if I had one antidote, that would be it. That qigong, man, that is very effective and it's so simple. And once you've got one CD, you're done. So you don't have to spend a lot of money doing these things.
Yeah.
Um, I would do that, and then I'd go. I would love to go running outside. There's by the trails. There are trails by a school near me, so I'd be around. I'm double whammy, right? I'm exercising and I'm in nature, which is also very healing and supportive. Not with ears. I'm attending to the world. I'm connecting to the world, and then I would read or I'd listen to a directed meditation or supportive videos that are supportive of healing. And then I'd make a great lunch. I'd get my children, right? I have had nannies for the kids all these years. So now I'm home and I'm with my kids. And that was one of the things I remember regretting is that I had a nanny doing what I wanted to be doing. I've got this big job, but really, I like that job. I want to do that. And there's on some level, you have to learn to unpack that stuff. I also started to work with somebody, a healer or a support person to get some of the stuff out of my mind, out of my backpack, right? We carry these
Yeah.
heavy backpacks and we can't even walk anymore. So you need somebody else to help in those. And I found somebody to do that. So I was just become a joyful thing. And I went to the grocery store and I learned how to get the right kinds of clean food, which is it took me about 2 months to figure that out. I'd read every ingredient. Oh, that's got garbage. Look at those stinky people. And so, but then I was like coming along. So I'd make a lovely dinner for everybody and then just enjoy my family for the rest of the night and then get to sleep at the 10 o'clock time. I
Yeah.
might read something, calm myself down, and understanding that that was part of healing too. And that's how I did. That's what I did. Those are just, I had other tools, but those are a normal day.
There's a hidden message in there, Jennifer, and whether or not you realize it or whether you do now is that you, like you said, you kind of hit on it. Is you just kind of did all the things that you wanted to do that you didn't allow yourself to do because you were busy providing, busy working, wanted to be successful, set a good example for the kids. When in reality, all you wanted to do was get up and make them breakfast, look after yourself, look after them. It's really strange, right? Because we're all going through it. I know we have to go to work. I know we have to work hard. We have to earn the money. We have to pay our bills. But the reality is there'll be a point in your life where you'll go, I just wish I hadn't have done as much as that. And I've lived that experience both with myself and with my own mum. Actually, we've had these deep and wonderful conversations recently around we both could have done things a little bit different. And I think that when you get on this journey, you realize that some people won't get on the journey. So if they're listening now and you're a carer again, or you're a family member, have a look at your own life and just see what you're missing out on because it's right in front of you. And those are the joys and the silver linings in life, not just in the cancer journey. Jennifer, I
Beautiful.
want to move to the closing questions. We've got some quick fire questions, and I do want to spend a little bit of time on the book as well. If you could go back in and talk to yourself on the day that you were diagnosed, what would you say?
What would I say? That you are deeply loved. That you are deeply loved, that it is not associated with whether you win, whether you don't, but that you are deeply, deeply loved just the what. And it's not conditioned upon achievement or anything like that, but that I think that was probably what I'd say.
And we could preface that these are your answers, by the way, but I don't want to feed in. But and again, it sounds like you've got more support than you know. That's where that love comes from. As you know, again, I think with you got that love from God, and I know you had that, but you have more support than you know, and you have to reach out to those people.
Absolutely.
What was the one thing that cancer couldn't take away from you?
It couldn't take my grit and couldn't take my sense of humor. And those are really big ones, right? And so instead of being knocked down and just being like, I'm victimized. Even I didn't know I was going to beat this. How could I possibly have known?
Yeah,
But I had that grit. I said, well, one person can beat this, then why can't I? Right. So
yeah.
that
Then two
grit was
people can.
very critical. And I wouldn't let those doctors mess up my mind too much, but then
Yeah.
the journey of laughing, I love laughing. Obviously, I giggle all the time. I laugh all the time. And I would even listen to comedians. Do you know that they've studied on that as far as healing aspects
Yeah.
of ourselves? Oh my gosh. So those would be my two things.
This is just a question that I'm going to ask you because it's not on my list and I've never asked this, but you saw it about comedians. Do you have a favorite comedian?
Yes, Brian. Oh God, there's two of them. Brian, it's in my book. I put it in there. Brian
That's all right. We'll
Reagan.
have a look.
Brian
I'm going to ask you
Brian
that question.
Reagan is so
Yeah.
funny, and it's not dirty. I've listened to them all, right? But the clean ones are actually they're better, right? They're better because they're more clever, and it's very funny. Like the ones who are just shocking you, oh, some
Yeah.
sex stuff, whatever, whatever. But he is really clever. He's probably my favorite.
I'll have a look.
Yes.
And we won't do it now, but I've got a recommendation for you for a clever comedian that here I'll give you that after. What are your non-negotiables on a daily basis every day? What do you do every day now?
Every day I exercise, I make my green drinks, and I have supplements. I have these really good, vitamin D3 and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mess with that. And I know I probably had more supplements than I needed, and then I do my breathing work. I mean, I don't exist without those things. Those are my basics. And then if I could do my qigong in there, if I need to, or if I can, I'll know. At
Yeah.
this point, once you use these tools, I have 22 tools I found. When they're like tools, right? Like toolboxes. Like my husband has all these
Yeah.
toolboxes. It's just like that. And I'll be like, oh, I'm feeling a little jazzed up. And I'll be like, whoops, take the tool. I need my qigong today. I need my
Yeah.
qigong, or I need a directed meditation. I need to just lie down, and I need to somebody bathe the good words in my mind so that I can shift my thinking. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And for the listeners that have been with us since the start and have been listening to all of the episodes, will notice that there is just a common theme when we ask that question, and it always is. It comes down to exercise, health, and you've got that. We talked exercise and these supplements in your food, and then mindset, right? And you touched on all three of those there. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that everybody says the same answer. So again,
Wow.
if you've not incorporated those things into your life, do them. There's a reason why everyone that answers that question the same way, because it's helping and it's just factual. Now, I think we'd be doing you a disservice at this point if we didn't. You've wrote an amazing book and you're doing some wonderful things in the community. And I follow you on Instagram and I love all your posts. But tell us about the book, right? Because I feel that, from what I know about you, that's your purpose. That's been your journey, and you've wrote a wonderful book. And in that book, you've got the 22 tools, all the things that you've been doing. And let's remind everyone that's listening, you were given a death sentence. You had a form of cancer that ultimately should have ended your life very quickly, and you have beaten all odds, and you are 14 years past
Yeah.
that journey, right?
Yeah.
So that's really important for the listeners to understand when we talk about someone that's giving you insight. Tell us about the book.
Well, so there's a book. Got it back there. Got it everywhere. Um, the book is just the book I wished I had had, honestly, when I got sick. You can read this in 3 days. That's what people have read it. They've got notes. They've reread it and reread it. It is the basics, right? What does it do? What is it? Can it help me? And how do I do it? Right? Like, so it's pretty basic. So it's really a passion for me because this is the way I could show other people what I learned. I'm so grateful to be alive. And I feel that there's a purpose for some of us, like me, who have the ability to do this. So my passion is to share this with as many people as possible so that they can be part of this and have the story just like me. So the cancer rates are ridiculous right now. It's unacceptable. So if I can I always say if one person, I've got more than that, but if one person can read this and make some adjustments and changes to the better, then I have done my job.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful book, and it's available on Amazon. I know everyone's got an Amazon account. I'm going to include the link in this release because, like I said, there is something in an individual that was given the journey that you're on, and then to come through that and be 14 years clear. There is something in there for everybody for us
Yeah.
to all learn, and I'm certainly I'm going to get stuck into that. Jennifer, thank you so much. I mean, this has been a wonderful conversation. I think you're an absolute beacon and lighthouse for everyone to sort of follow and use as a guide. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I honestly don't know if we got everything out of. I've got so many notes here. I feel like we need another episode
We'll do
with
another
Jennifer just
one.
to
We'll do
really get.
another one.
We
I've
we
done that
absolutely have
before.
to because there's so much in there, and I had to skip through. But Jennifer, thank you so much. Wonderful guest, and I look forward to having another conversation with you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Another fantastic episode, and that's a conversation I could have had for hours with Jennifer. We're talking about an individual here that has been going through, dealing with, living with, or even at the end of getting out of his 14 years of experience. I don't think we can underestimate just how much knowledge is there over a 14-year period. But there were, as always, I look back at the episode and what are the three things that I might take away from that? And the first one was Jennifer talked about flooding her body each day with all good things: clean food, movement, breath work, and rest. It wasn't about waiting to feel better first. She treated her body like the healing was already happening. She just continued to do all the good things. The part that I took from that is that you don't need to wait for a diagnosis like cancer to start showing up for yourself. When you're on this journey, people like myself who have got cancer, we immediately look to how can we do things better and create an environment within our bodies that is hostile for cancer. And, again, Jennifer talked about it: clean food, movement, breath work, making sure she rested. But I want to make sure that we're aware that we don't have to wait for diagnosis to start showing up for yourself. We can create a daily routine now that supports our health like it matters now, not later. So that was the thing, that was number one. The second one, and this has come up a couple of times actually, a lot of us when we're on this journey or when we've been diagnosed, we look back at the life that we've been living and we tie it to something. Certainly you heard from Jennifer saying she tied it to stress. She was a lawyer, she had multiple firms, she was extremely busy and highly stressful. Looking back, she believed that some of what she was about to go through when she was first diagnosed was really attributed to the level of stress she brought into her life. So really the takeaway there is you might think that stress is just a part of life, but the reality is it really isn't. A high level of stress in your life is actually doing real damage. If you can remove that level of stress and find yourself in a position where you can reduce it, that's going to serve you well. But again, how do we get rid of stress? It goes back to doing our breath work, doing our meditation, making sure we're exercising, making sure that we're eating well. These are all things that we can do. And just take a look at the things that might be causing you stress and whether you can remove those. I know that's not always possible, but if you can, then do it. Don't wait for something to happen later on. Number three was trusting your instincts. Even when the experts don't trust theirs, they're built on this protocol and this is how we do things. Most of us going through this journey, and Jennifer included, knew something was probably not quite right before we were diagnosed. We should have trusted our gut. So whether it's health, relationship, or work, your body knows more than you think. So slow down, listen to your body and back yourself. There's an inner voice that's probably talking to you daily about the way you're living or the things you're doing. Listen to it, acknowledge it, and maybe do something about it. So another fantastic episode. I took a lot away from that. I will say that there were things that me and Jennifer had spoken about previously before this episode that didn't come up, and I wish they had. They're amazing insight, which is why I think we'll end up doing another episode with Jennifer. I hope you all enjoyed it as always, and thank you again for your support and look forward to getting the next episode out.